Welcome to our unique YouTube channel, the Ministry of the Real Truth.
Our next few videos will be centered around all the baloney, crap, rubbish, garbage that's been preached to us as the truth by people who are lying through their teeth and so forth over the centuries up to these modern times. We're going to start with the Bible history and the Shroud of Turin. Is it a relic or is it a forgery? We found this website with this particular article. We have found information from another reliable source which states that it is probably a medieval fake. It makes comparisons with the biblical scriptures on Jesus' death and burial in the tomb, wrapped in the cloths, certain oils, etc., etc., put on before the body was placed in this cloth, these cloths, and put into the tomb and sealed up tight with a rock at the front, right? A big stone at the front, and 2 Roman guards or 2 temple guards. So here it says, new study claims an ancient earthquake can shed light on the Shroud of Turin. Is the Shroud of Turin real or fake? Its authenticity has long been questioned. Radiocarbon dating tests conducted in the 1980s concluded that the shroud dated to the 13th to 14th century. A recently published study in the journal Mechanica, however, claims that an earthquake that hit Jerusalem in 33 CE may have increased the shroud's carbon-14 levels, putting into doubt the accuracy of the original radiocarbon tests. The shroud is purported to be Jesus' burial cloth, according to the account of Jesus supposedly being invited to Edessa by Abgar, the king at the time, Abgar the Black. He said, I can't make it because I'm going about doing my father's work. And he dies on a cross and so forth. And then the head cloth used to cover Jesus was given to him along with a letter by Jesus, or possibly just on its own, and it healed the king and his son of their afflictions. And then later on it was supposedly stolen from this king when his country Edessa was invaded, and could possibly have been the Shroud of Turin, or the Shroud of Turin is actually a fake. We can post that information for you in our description box under the video if it's not too long. We may split the videos into 2, so we'll put the first part on that one and the second part on the second one. Okay, so back to this article. The shroud is purported to be Jesus' burial cloth, front and back. Images of a man who seems to have been crucified can be seen on the 14 by 3'5" linen cloth, as described by Vaughan M. Bryant Jr. in the November-December 2000 issue of BAR. The tradition of Jesus' burial shroud in a cloth, now known as the Shroud of Turin, has had a long and complicated history. Eusebius reported that in 30 AD a certain Thaddeus, one of Jesus' disciples, Thaddeus, not Adai, gave a cloth with an image on it to King Abgar V, or Abgar the Black, whose palace was in Edessa in modern Turkey. Abgar was severely ill with what scholars now believe may have been leprosy. However, after Abgar touched the cloth, he was miraculously healed. The news of his cure spread rapidly, and soon many pilgrims were flocking to Edessa to see and touch the cloth. More than 900 years later, in 944, the emperor of the Byzantine Empire, Romanus I, wanted to obtain the magic cloth, which by then had become known as the Mandalion, or little handkerchief. The city of Edessa refused to give up its sacred relic, so Romanus I laid siege to the city until the people surrendered the Mandalion. The cloth was then taken to the Byzantine capital of Constantinople. According to Byzantine historians, the Mandalion bore only the facial image of Jesus. Some believers today say that the Mandalion was the shroud folded into 8 to make a small square, leaving only the face visible. This may be why, if the Mandalion and the shroud are one and the same, historians did not record that the Mandalion contained a full body image. But why they wouldn't realize its true size is hard to fathom. In 1204, Knights of the Temple of Solomon, an order of monk knights, also known as the Knights Templar, of the Fourth Crusade, reportedly took the cloth, whether the Mandalion or the shroud, to France. It remained in France until sometime during the early 1300s, when it was removed to England for safekeeping after King Philip IV of France destroyed and confiscated properties owned by the Knights of the Temple of Solomon. After about half a century in England, it returned to France, and in 1357 a French nobleman, Geoffrey de Charmaine, displayed a cloth to the public in Lille, France, as the true burial shroud of Jesus. However, he never revealed where the shroud came from, nor how he acquired it. This is the first verifiable reference to the object now called the Shroud of Turin. In 1453, that cloth was given to the King of Savoy. For more than a century it remained in a castle belonging to the House of Savoy in Chambéry, France. After surviving a fire in the castle in 1532, the shroud was eventually brought to Turin, where it has remained since 1578, in the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist. We may have that information. Here we go. So here it is here. There are several elements that challenge the authenticity of the Shroud of Turin. According to the writings of the Gospel of John, Jesus was buried with multiple cloths and not a single shroud as shown by the Shroud of Turin. John 25-7, John 11:44. Moreover, the shroud shows traces of blood, whereas according to John 19:40, Jesus was buried with 75 pounds of spices, which is not visible on the shroud. Dating. Carbon-14 dating tests conducted in 1988 dated the shroud between 1260 and 1390 AD, placing it in the medieval period and not during the time of Jesus. Some researchers dispute these results, but no other reliable dating method has allowed it to be dated prior to the medieval period. Historical provenance. The shroud appears in historical records only from 1357, when it was first publicly displayed in Lille, France. Before that, its trail is lost. This absence of clear historical traceability raises doubts about its authenticity. Technical characteristics. Several technical aspects of the shroud, such as the morphology of the man represented on the nature of the blood stains, do not correspond to Jewish burial practices of the time of Jesus. This suggests that the shroud could be a medieval creation, or created in the Middle Ages. In conclusion, although the Shroud of Turin is a sacred relic for many Christians, current evidence seems to indicate that it is more likely a medieval fake rather than the true shroud that wrapped the body of Jesus. Its connection with the Shroud of Edessa mentioned in historical sources remains uncertain. So there you go, folks. It's verification that it's a fake. It's been created in the Middle Ages and so forth, and it doesn't relate to the Jewish practices, burial practices, and according to the scriptures. So if you like that we have brought this to you, that we've revealed this to you, then give us a like, subscribe to our channel, add your comments below, and then share this video with all your family, friends and others. Peace be with you, peace be upon you. We are the Ministry of the Real Truth, and we found this book in the public domain, public access, and it carries a Creative Commons license, attribution non-commercial, no derivatives, works 3.0, so it shouldn't have any copyright problems. No copyright infringement was intentional. And this is a book titled Jesus' Half-Brothers Speak, James and Jude by Dr. Bob Utley. And in the description, it is written, James is a very practical book which emphasizes appropriate daily living. It is much like wisdom literature. Many of the teachings are paralleled in the Sermon on the Mount of Matthew 5 through 7. The book of Jude is a frightening book about the current danger of error, rebellion and judgment, possibly in his era, in his day. Believers must always be on guard and remember that their protection is from God. The conclusion is one of the strongest prayers of affirmation of the keeping power of God in all the Bible. Part of the You Can Understand the Bible series. For more of Dr. Utley's Bible study guides, go to this website here, freebiblecommentary.org, and underneath this particular book on this particular website, it has many sermons of Dr. Utley and books in a couple of different languages here. So, who was Dr. Bob Utley, or who is he? So, I'm going to go look online. Bob Utley is a contemporary Bible teacher who is best known for his commentary series that covers the Old and New Testaments and his education history. He's very highly qualified, as a PhD and so forth. This is publications, bibliography, see also Southern Baptist Convention, references and external links. More on Bob, and it's basically a website with similar information. He approaches Bible teachings from an exegetical, verse-by-verse, historical, grammatical point of view. In addition, great effort is made to remove his and their social, cultural, experiential and denominational biases. Bob tries to support his interpretation from the biblical text in one of 6 ways. 1. Literary context. 2. Historical setting of the biblical author. 3. Word studies. 4. Grammatical relationships. 5. Parallel biblical passages. And 6. Literary genres. And even more on Bob is this web page here, which basically gives you what he's written over the years, and it goes on. There's quite a lot there, so we can leave a link to that at the bottom of this video in the description box. Okay, so we're going to have a look at his book, Free Bible Commentary. You can understand the Bible, Jesus' Half-Brothers Speak, James and Jude. And we're going to compare it with the original ancient Galilean Aramaic manuscripts of the original ancient Apostolic Church of the East Restored, translated into the nearest English equivalent by a native-born Aramaic-speaking translator, Victor N. Alexander, who's had at least 20 years or more experience translating these original ancient and therefore preserved manuscripts into the nearest English equivalent. So here it says, you can understand the Bible, Jesus' Half-Brothers Speak, James and Jude, by Dr. Bob Utley, retired Professor of Hermeneutics, Biblical Interpretation. Table of contents. A word from the author. How can this commentary help you? Biblical interpretation is a rational and spiritual process that attempts to understand an ancient inspired writer in such a way that the message from God may be understood and applied in our day. The spiritual process is crucial but difficult to define. It does involve a yieldedness and openness to God. There must be a hunger, 1, for Him, 2, to know Him, and 3, to serve Him. This process involves prayer, confession, and the willingness for lifestyle change. That's very key. The Spirit is crucial in the interpretive process, but why sincere godly Christians understand the Bible differently is a mystery, because they're not being taught through that Spirit, as he suggests. It's off the top of their head, from memory. They'll be taught this is how it is from their ministers, their pastors, reverends, whoever, and that's it. Okay, we know, we have the qualifications, we're of God, you're just a baby to it, etc., etc. Plus they also have the Americanized English Bible versions, which we can verify through two people's personal research that they all come from the Roman Catholic Church. Put out into the world by the American Bible Society and their pamphlets and similar Bible societies. The rational process is easier to describe. We must be consistent and fair to the text and not be influenced by our personal or denominational biases. We are all historically conditioned. Exactly. None of us are objective, neutral interpreters. This commentary offers a careful, rational process containing 3 interpretive principles structured to help us overcome our biases. First principle. The first principle is to note the historical setting in which a biblical book was written and a particular historical occasion for its authorship. The original author had a purpose, a message to communicate. The text cannot mean something to us that it never meant to the original ancient inspired author. This intent, not our historical, emotional, cultural, personal, denominational need, is the key. Application is an integral part to interpretation, but proper interpretation must always precede application. It must be reiterated that every biblical text has one and only one meaning. This meaning is what the original biblical author intended through the Spirit's leadership to communicate to us day. This one meaning may have many possible applications to different cultures and situations. These applications must be linked to the central truth of the original author. For this reason, this study guide commentary is designed to provide an introduction to each book of the Bible. Second principle. The second principle is to identify the literary units. Every biblical book is a unified document. Interpreters have no right to isolate one aspect of truth by excluding others. Therefore, we must strive to understand the purpose of the whole biblical book before we can interpret the individual literary units. The individual parts, chapters, paragraphs, or verses cannot mean what the whole unit does not mean. Interpretation must move from a deductive approach of the whole to an inductive approach to the parts. Therefore, this study guide commentary is designed to help the student analyze the structure of each literary unit by paragraphs. Paragraph and chapter divisions are not inspired, but they do aid us in identifying thought units. Interpreting at a paragraph level, not sentence, clause, phrase, or word level, is the key in following the biblical author's intended meaning. Paragraphs are based on a unified topic, often called the theme or topical sentence. Every word, phrase, clause, and sentence in the paragraph relates somehow to this unified theme. They limit it, expand it, explain it, and or question it. A real key to proper interpretation is to follow the original author's thought on a paragraph by paragraph basis through the individual literary units that make up the biblical book. This study guide commentary is designed to help the students do that by different translations. The study guide commentary is designed to help the student do that by comparing modern English translations. These translations have been selected because they employ different translation theories. 1. The United Bible Society's Greek text is a revised 4th edition UBS4. This text was paragraphed by a modern text as follows. 2. The New King James Version, NKJV, is a word-for-word literal translation based on the Greek manuscript tradition known as the Textus Receptus. Its paragraph divisions that are longer than the other translations. These longer units help the student to see the unified topics. 3. The New Revised Standard Version, NRSV, is a modified word-for-word translation. So, it's an up-to-date English language version, right? It forms a midpoint between the following two modern versions. Its paragraph divisions are quite helpful in identifying subjects. 4. The Today's English Version, TEV, is a dynamic equivalent translation published by the United Bible Society. It attempts to translate the Bible in such a way that a modern English reader or speaker can understand the meaning of the Greek text. Often, especially in the Gospels, it divides paragraphs by speaker rather than by subject, in the same way as the NIV. For the interpreter's purpose, this is not helpful. It is interesting to note that both the UBS4 and TEV are published by the same entity, yet their paragraphing differs. 5. The Jerusalem Bible, JB, is a dynamic equivalent translation based on a French Catholic translation. And this is one of the ones that Rabbi Tobias Singer says, yeah, watch out for that, watch out for this version. Watch out for the JBS, right? It's code for the Jerusalem Bible Society, something like that. He gives a warning on one of his talks, on Tanakh talk. It is very helpful in comparing the paragraphing from a European perspective. 6. The printed text is the 1995 updated New American Standard Bible, NASB, which is a word-for-word translation. The verse-by-verse comments from following this paragraphing. Okay, with that, with these versions, okay, if it's word-for-word, then why would Mark 15:34 say, my God, which is correct? Why have you forsaken me, which is incorrect, because that's second to third generation Arabic Greek transliteration. Whereas the original ancient Galilean Aramaic says wherefore, which indicates destiny. Why have you left me? God does not forsake, he never forsook his son. Supposedly. Third principle. The third principle is to read the Bible in different translations in order to grasp the widest possible range of meaning, semantic field that biblical words or phrases may have. Often a Greek phrase or word can be understood in several ways. These different translations bring up these options and help to identify and explain the Greek manuscript variations. These do not affect doctrine, but they do help us to try to get back to the original text penned by an inspired ancient writer. We don't seem to have that problem. Okay, that these new Americanized English Bible versions that he's suggesting can be confusing, because one will say one thing, one will say another, two will agree, three will be different, right? Like that. So we stick with the Galilean Aramaic New Testament, the original ancient manuscripts hidden for 2,000 years by the original Apostolic Church of the East, erroneously called the Nestorian Church. He was not their founder. Because this Victor N. Alexander, a native-born Aramaic-speaking translator from Mesopotamia, Syria, makes it really, really easy, like, because the Galilean Aramaic uses a lot of idioms, or these forms of expression, Eastern expression, right, from these writers, etc. Every chapter he puts underneath footnotes, fully explaining it on his website that was down, va.com, but we revived it, resurrected it. He had a hell of a lot of information, right? He went really, really deep. He's gone really, really deep, and it's like so easy to grasp. Again, it's not confusing. So don't have 10 or 20 different versions saying 10 or 20 different things. It's just boom, straight from the original manuscripts, translated into the nearest English equivalent where we can. Because some words in the Galilean Aramaic there is no English equivalent to, like Muta, which is a sacred title for Yeshua Mashiach, or Jesus the Messiah. It's him alone. Okay. So there was no English equivalent, so this Victor N. Alexander had to run around and find an English word that was similar, and manifestation basically means revealing or revelation. Something that was hidden and then it was suddenly revealed. So his translation into the nearest English equivalent, we believe, is the easiest to understand. Okay. Sometimes it can get a little difficult because when he translates directly from that language using his method, it's not a fully perfect grammatically structured sentence. Okay. It might say your is name, etc., etc. It's all run the wrong way, right? To us, Western thinkers, Western educated. Okay, so The third principle is to read the Bible in different translations in order to grasp the widest possible range of meaning, semantic field that biblical words or phrases may have. Often a Greek phrase or word can be understood in several ways. These different translations bring up these options and help to identify and explain the Greek manuscript variations. These do not affect doctrine, but they do help us to try to get back to the original text penned by an inspired ancient writer. This commentary offers a quick way for the student to check his interpretations. It is not meant to be definitive, but rather informative and thought-provoking. Often, other possible interpretations help us not to be so parochial, dogmatic, and denominational. Right? That's the way they teach you, right? That's what it says. This is what it means. This is what it says. Trust us, we know. You don't. We are of God, etc., etc. Often other possible interpretations help us not to be so parochial, dogmatic, and denominational. Well, my church says, or my version says, i.e. King James Version only. Right? Interpreters need to have a large range of interpretive options to recognise how ambiguous the ancient text can be. It is shocking how little agreement there is among Christians who claim the Bible as their source of faith. Yeah, because you have these different denominations with different ideas, perspectives, and so forth, right? Or their own interpretation of what the scriptures say, whether they have a hidden agenda or motive or whatever, or not. These principles have helped the author, Dr. Bob Utley, overcome much of his historical conditioning by forcing him to struggle with the ancient text, and his hope was that it would be a blessing to all of you as well. Bob Utley, June 27, 1996.